It's just past 7:30 here in India, live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague Benji Haya from Washington, D.C. Good evening from Delhi, Benji.
Yes, good morning. 9 a.m. here in Washington and 3 in the afternoon across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, we'll have the latest on Western military action in the Middle East and developments in the US, a possible breakthrough on Capitol Hill and Donald Trump back in the headlines. All that coming up after the latest headlines with you.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi pledges to keep the nation first always in his reply to the motion of thanks on the President's address in India's lower house of Parliament. Pakistan sees a resurgence of terrorist attacks ahead of elections. At least 10 killed in a police station attack in northwest province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. US vows further action after 3 days of strikes against Iran-backed militia. US Secretary of State Antony Blinken arrives in Saudi Arabia for talks on the Gaza conflict. And female artists sweep major awards at the 66th Grammys. Taylor Swift makes history by winning her 4th album of the year. India's Zakir Hussain, Shankar Mahadevan and Rakesh Chaurasia among the 5 Indians honoured at the event. First news from Asia. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi replied to the motion of thanks on the President's address in the lower house of Indian Parliament, the Lok Sabha, on Monday. During his address, PM Modi confidently said that his government will return for a next term and asserted that the country will be the 3rd largest economy in the next few years.
कि हमारे तीसरे टर्म में भारत दुनिया की तीसरी बड़ी आर्थिक ताकत बनेगा। और ये मोदी की गारंटी है।
Prime Minister of India said that the country has suffered through the mindset of opposition, which has never trusted the capabilities of its citizens.
ये लोग 2014 में कह रहे हैं और विजन क्या देखते हैं 2044 यानी 2044 तक तीसरी अर्थव्यवस्था की बात, ये इनकी सोच, ये इनकी मर्यादा, सपना भी देखने का सामर्थ्य खो चुके थे लोग।
On to Pakistan now. In northwest Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province of the country, at least 10 police personnel were killed and 6 others injured in a terrorist attack on a police station on Monday. Snipers attacked the police station and then entered the building in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Meanwhile, a National Assembly candidate was also shot dead last Wednesday in the same region. On the same day, another political leader was shot dead in his party's election office in Balochistan province. In a separate incident, a bomb attack following an election rally killed 4 people in Balochistan last Tuesday. Islamic State had claimed responsibility for that attack. With the Pakistan general elections drawing near on Thursday, explosions and violence have become a prevalent feature in the last few days in the country. Now, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has reached Saudi Arabia, his first stop in a larger tour of the Middle East aimed at securing a new truce deal in the Israel-Hamas conflict. This is Blinken's 5th trip to the region since the conflict between Israel and Hamas began on October 7th last year. The top US diplomat will also travel to Egypt, Qatar, Israel and the West Bank region later. US State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller in a statement said that the Secretary will continue diplomatic efforts to reach an agreement that secures the release of remaining Israeli hostages and includes a humanitarian pause that will allow for sustained delivery of humanitarian assistance to civilians in Gaza. Newly appointed French Foreign Minister Stéphanie Séjourné met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in Jerusalem on Monday. The two leaders discussed the growing conflict in West Asia, safety of Israeli hostages held by Hamas, and also spoke about finding alternatives to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency in the Gaza Strip. On the ground, Israeli military claims to have killed dozens of terrorists in the past 24 hours, with Gaza's Khan Yunis being one of the primary locations. The Israeli army released a video on Monday showing the Jivati Brigade in action as they operated at the Al-Qadsiya compound, one of the main bases where Hamas terrorists trained for the October 7th attack. The base also contained the offices of senior Hamas officers like Mohammed Sinwar, rocket storage facilities, and shafts leading to the underground tunnel routes. A 14-year-old Palestinian was shot dead by Israeli forces in an attempted stabbing incident on Monday near the West Bank settlement. During the inspection, the suspect pulled out a knife and attempted to stab an officer who responded with fire and killed him. No other casualties have been reported. So the US plans more strikes in West Asia against Iran-backed Houthi groups. This is in response to a recent attack on American troops in Jordan. My colleague Benji Hayer is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Benji, tough diplomacy will be at play again.
Yes, the US military releasing dramatic footage of missiles being fired from warships USS Gravely, Carney and Eisenhower, striking Iranian-backed Houthi targets in the Red Sea. These strikes by the US and the UK against 36 Houthi targets came a day after the United States military hit Tehran-linked forces in both countries in response, as you say, to an attack on US troops in Jordan which killed 3 soldiers. National Security Advisor to the White House, Jake Sullivan, in an interview on Sunday, said the US is planning more steps in response.
This was the beginning of our response. There will be more steps. Some of those steps will be seen, some may not be seen, but there will be more action taken to respond to the tragic death of the 3 brave U.S. service members. And we cannot rule out that there will be further attacks from Iranian-backed militias in Iraq and Syria or from the Houthis. And I would just say, from the perspective of Tehran, if they chose to respond directly to the United States, they would be met with a swift and forceful response from us.
Britain's Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, meanwhile, says these strikes on the Houthis were in, quote, self-defence against the group's continued targeting of commercial ships and warships in the Red Sea. Later today, on Monday, the United Nations Security Council's holding an emergency meeting to discuss the strikes. That meeting requested by Russia, who's accused Washington of intentionally aggravating the situation in West Asia. Staying in the US, the Senate, the upper chamber of Congress, has unveiled a $118 billion bipartisan border security bill in order to tighten border security on the southern border between the United States and Mexico. It will also provide aid to Ukraine and Israel. The bill, announced on Sunday, would provide $60 billion in aid to the war-torn countries Ukraine and $14 billion in security assistance to Israel. That package, the result of months of negotiations, but the measure faces an uncertain future on Capitol Hill amid opposition by former President Donald Trump and a group of hard-line Republican Party lawmakers. And staying with Donald Trump, well, the United States Supreme Court is scheduled to hear his appeal this Thursday in regards to a ruling by Colorado's top court that disqualified him from the state's Republican primary ballot for his alleged role in the January 6th attack on the US Capitol 3 years ago. Mr. Trump is also advancing claims of immunity in other cases that may go to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, where in the past the courts ruled that presidential immunity cannot be absolute. The former president and Republican frontrunner for the next election is also facing 4 criminal cases and a civil litigation as he vies for the Oval Office again. Crossing over to Russia, the Kremlin on Monday warned the West that any attempt to use their frozen assets to raise funds for Ukraine would be illegal. Russia says that such a step by the West would be a blow to the fundamental parameters of the international economy. Those comments coming after reports that the G7 group of countries had drawn up plans to use frozen Russian assets as collateral for debt sold to help Ukraine. DD India's Dashina Chernyshkovka reports from Moscow.
Moscow says any move to seize its assets frozen in the West will be deeply illegal and will have decades-long judicial consequences. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said Moscow is closely monitoring the situation and Russia will challenge any decisions to protect its interests if its assets are illegally seized. The comments come after months of speculation that the West is coming around to the idea to seize Russian assets held overseas as collateral to raise funds for Ukraine. It is estimated that around $300 billion of Russian assets were frozen in the West after Moscow launched its so-called special military operation in Ukraine almost 2 years ago. Russia says the encroachment on someone else's property undermines the foundations of the entire economic system. Peskov added that the Western decision-makers understand these inevitable consequences. Earlier, Russian Finance Minister Anton Siluanov said if the EU confiscates Russian frozen assets, Russia will take symmetrical retaliatory measures against European assets. Russian Foreign Ministry said any encroachment on the Russian assets will be treated as an outright theft. Dasha Chernyshova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
Finally, from Washington, let's cross to Chile, where the death toll from raging wildfires has risen to at least 112. Hundreds more people are still missing. Chilean authorities have introduced a 9 p.m. curfew in the hardest hit areas and sent in the military to help firefighters. Helicopters continue to dump water to try to douse the flames. Rescuers have been struggling, though, to reach the badly affected areas, and the Chilean government's urged people not to travel to those regions hit by the fire. Earlier, President Gabriel Boric announced 2 days of national mourning, warning that casualties are set to rise significantly. Well, that's it from me here in Washington. Back to you in the studio.
Thank you very much, Benji, for those updates. Benji Haya joining us all from Washington, D.C. You're watching DD India Global, still to come on the show. Building on the success of the 2023 edition, Goa set to host India Energy Week 2024 tomorrow. 2 people were killed this afternoon after heavy mortar shells fired from Myanmar exploded inside Bangladesh.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world, one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back. You are watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. The India Energy Week 2024 is anticipated to be a pivotal event symbolizing India's dedication to influencing the future of energy. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi will inaugurate the event on February 6th. DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya reports from Goa.
Exciting updates coming up on the India Energy Week 2024 to be held in Goa. From February 6th to 9th, it will host 17 energy ministers, more than 35,000 guests and more than 9,000 exhibitors. A 30% growth in exhibitors and a 25% expansion in the exhibition area promises a groundbreaking event. With more than 44% session, including new tech categories like future mobility and mining, India Energy Week 2024 is set to be dynamic. Joint discussions on global cooperation, carbon capture, and a special PM Modi's roundtable with oil and gas CEOs will be the highlight of this India Energy Week. Explore themes like biofuels and green hydrogen, reflecting India's shift towards sustainability. Don't miss out on the energy revolution at India Energy Week 2024. This is Tapas Bhattacharya signing off from Goa, along with my camera person Ajit.
A parliamentary delegation from Suriname is visiting India. The delegation met Indian Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar. Vice President Dhankar earlier welcomed the delegation in the upper house of Indian Parliament. Earlier in the day, Chairman of the National Assembly of Suriname, Marinus Bey, held talks with Lok Sabha Speaker Birla in New Delhi today. Speaker Birla described the cultural relations between the two countries as historical. The Energy and Research Institute, TERE, will host the 23rd edition of the World Sustainable Development Summit 2024 between 7th and 9th of February. The Director General of TERE, Dr. Vibha Dhawan, said that the summit would showcase the path for the Global South. A report.
It's more, I should say, regional, more focus on the Global South with the world leaders. So what we are doing essentially is we are discussing with different partners, different stakeholders. So it is from the policymakers to students. So what we expect, because we all know India is on the trajectory of fast growth. And therefore, it's very important for us to follow green path as much as possible. And I'm very confident as a country, as the commitments which comes from the Honorable Prime Minister, and the way we are meeting those commitments, we as a country, we are going to lead the way.
India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar met his Swiss counterpart Ignazio Cassis at the Hyderabad House in New Delhi today. The two leaders discussed ways to further strengthen bilateral ties after celebrations of the 75th year of India-Switzerland Friendship Treaty last year. They also exchanged perspectives on regional and international issues, including the conflict in Ukraine. Switzerland's foreign minister gifted the mission of the Sun Watch to his Indian counterpart. In Bangladesh, 2 people were killed and a child injured on Monday afternoon as a mortar shell from across Myanmar border exploded at Gumdum in Bandarban district. Bullets and mortar shells have been fired into Bangladesh over the last 2 days as gun battle between Myanmar troops and their armed group called Arakan Army has escalated in the Rakhine state of Myanmar. Bangladesh's border with Myanmar stretches 271 kilometers from the tri-point with India in the north to the Bay of Bengal in the south. And now we take a look at what else is happening around the world. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak met with top Northern Ireland executive ministers, including Prime Minister Leo Varadkar and newly elected First Minister Michelle O'Neill on Monday in Belfast. The meeting follows the restoration of the devolved government of Ireland after a 2-year boycott of power sharing. However, a new deal with the British government to ease post-Brexit trade differences led to a breakthrough. Hundreds of protesters gathered outside Senegal's National Assembly after President Macky Sall announced the postponement of the country's presidential election. Outside the parliament, armoured police fired tear gas at protesters and made arrests. The lawmakers will debate a bill in the parliament that would reschedule the election for August the 25th. Taiwan has said that Chinese military activity was detected again near its territory. Taiwan's defense ministry said on Monday that 9 Chinese military aircraft were detected crossing the sensitive median of the Taiwan Strait. The ministry further said that joint combat readiness patrols were also conducted with Chinese warships. Many commuters in Japan's capital, Tokyo, headed home early on Monday following warnings of heavy snowfall in the city for the first time this year. According to Japan's meteorological agency, heavy snow is expected in Greater Tokyo area till Tuesday. 46 flights to and from Haneda were cancelled by Japan Airlines and 30 flights were halted by All Nippon Airways. And next, news from the 66th Grammy Awards. Female artists swept major awards across categories. Taylor Swift made a Grammy history by winning her 4th Album of the Year award for Midnights. Billie Eilish claimed Song of the Year for What Was I Made For, while Miley Cyrus took Record of the Year for Flowers. Indian musicians also dazzled in one of the biggest nights in the world of music. Tabla maestro Zakir Hussain became the first artist from India to win 3 Grammys in a single night. Flautist Rakesh Chaurasia won 2 Grammys. 3 other Indians, Shankar Mahadevan, Selva Ganesh, Vinay Akram and Ganesh Rajagopalan, also took the honours. Take a look.
Remembered, I just won my first Grammy!
Music's biggest night of the year, the 66th Grammy Awards, took place on Monday in California's Los Angeles. The ceremony saw top artists from across the world get together to honor the best in music in 2023. India took the limelight as musicians Shankar Mahadevan and Zakir Hussain's fusion band Shakti bagged the Best Global Music Album Award for the album This Moment. Zakir Hussain also won the Best Global Music Performance for Project Pashto. Indian flutist Rakesh Chaurasia's collaborative album As We Speak also won Best Contemporary Instrumental Album.
Our deepest thanks, our families are here, and without them, we are nothing. Without love, without music, without harmony, we are nothing.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi congratulated the winners with a post on X and said that the accolade is an inspiration for a new generation of artists. The win comes amidst a growing mainstream recognition of Indian classical music.
Ustad Zakir Hussain actually won 3 Grammy Awards in one night and pretty much created history doing that. And Rakesh Chaurasia won 2 Grammy Awards in the same night, which is amazing. It's absolutely amazing, how much Indian music was recognized tonight. Everything at the end of the day trickles down to arts and culture because our visibility all over the world creates a lot of curiosity for our traditions, for our culture, for our music. And that's what we saw today, that, Indian music is pretty much going mainstream all over the world.
As female artists swept major awards across categories, Taylor Swift made Grammy history by winning her 4th Album of the Year award for Midnights, the most by any artist in history.
For me, the award is the work. All I want to do is keep being able to do this. I love it so much. It makes me so happy. It makes me unbelievably blown away that it makes some people happy who voted for this award too.
She also picked up Best Pop Vocal Album. Billie Eilish claimed Song of the Year for What Was I Made For, while Miley Cyrus took Record of the Year for Flowers. R&B and pop singer Victoria Monet took home the Best New Artist Award after 15 years into her career. Rapper Jay-Z was honored with the Dr. Dre Global Impact Award. Winners were chosen by musicians, producers, engineers, and others who make up the Recording Academy. Akin to the Golden Globes, the Recording Academy in recent years has worked to diversify its membership by inviting more women and people of color. Akriti Bhandari for DD India.
Congratulations to all the Grammy winners. That's all for this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. Connect with us on Facebook, X, and Instagram at DD India Live. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.
In a world that never stops,